So I'm going to go ahead and start, and people will come in. I don't have to allow them to come in. It won't interrupt our flow. And I'm going to keep this is pretty informal talk. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Rayna Stimson. I am the interim head of the upper school at Derryfield. I am also a director of student leadership, and that is student leadership 6 through 12. So I really have my eye on the programming as it is all the way across from middle school to the upper school. So having that long view is really actually very helpful too, getting to know some of the students in middle school and encouraging them along the way to take risks in leadership. And then also starting in upper school, it's a whole new experience. Even if students have been active in the middle school, trying things out in the upper school can at times seem very daunting. So I like to start fresh in ninth grade and kind of reset and give everyone an opportunity to see themselves as leaders and give them lots of opportunities to take risks and really grow. And so what I hope to do, just a little bit of housekeeping, is we're going to use the Q&A feature in a little while, and I'm going to ask you to answer some questions actually, and try to make it a little interactive and get a read on what you're thinking and kind of your responses on some of these things as it relates to your your son or daughter in your household, and get a read on some things, because that will really be helpful for me. And I'm just going to acknowledge that we are going through a lot, and you guys are sometimes getting a lot of information about lots of things. So we'd sometimes like to dial in very specifically on the great things that we do sort of all the time at Derryfield, but maybe as parents, you don't always know. In other words, I've been there as a parent, Derryfield parent, when I ask my son or daughters, what do you want to get involved in? How come I don't hear a lot about club activities for you? Are you in a club, or what are you doing? So I'm hoping that as a former Derryfield parent, I can give you some specifics that would really help you to talk to your son or daughter. And that way you will say, actually, I found out that, there are clubs that are happening every week in your programming. And I heard you can join up to 2 clubs. And so what clubs are you involved in? What clubs do you want to be involved in? So I hope to give you a lot of information. That is my goal. I hope to be able to answer questions. So what I'll do is I'll paint the picture of opportunities at Derryfield School, sort of what I'm learning, my own self in terms of my own leadership and my own education, as I'm in a doctoral program for educational leadership. So I'm learning the best practices, the research, what the research says about skill development and how students see themselves as leaders, what helps them to see themselves as leaders. Then what I do is I take that information, and along with our amazing team at Derryfield School, we incorporate these lessons in our leadership programming. And also we have a lead program, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but I hope to give you more specifics about the lead program, so you know the kind of lessons that your son or daughter has had access to so far this year. And again, talking points for you at home, because talking points are always helpful if students are not always very forthcoming about what they're doing at school. And I just wanted to let you know there is a fireside chat. In addition to this, there is a fireside chat that will be happening this Thursday, just for you to plan ahead. I know many of you might have interest in what's happening at Derryfield in terms of protocols and how they might be changing. There might be good news coming and how we're sort of being more flexible this week, or we might be in a couple of weeks even more if we're able, how we collect data, how we make decisions. And I know Dr. Carter will be doing a deep dive on that on Thursday. You're going to get an email from her and her team tomorrow, and there'll be information on how to register for that. So I wanted to tell you that. And again, we'll use the Q&A periodically. I'm going to do some interactive stuff. That's the teacher in me. I'm going to try to engage you, because I know webinars not the most engaging because I can't see you. I know you're there. I see your numbers, but I don't, I don't see you. So I like to get the feedback and ask you some specific questions. And at about 6:30, I'm going to stop talking so that there's time for Q&A in case there's anything that I've missed along the way. So I will gather some questions, and also do not worry. I have pages of notes for you. You don't have to take everything down. You can take certain things down, of course, if you want to follow up right away with your son or daughter, but I'm going to provide follow-up notes for everybody that attends this webinar so that can really kind of focus in and try to take in the information as it comes. So let's start. So I have the pleasure of working with student leaders every day. It's really probably the best part of my day, or best part of my week. I have a lot of touch points with student leaders. So I'm just going to say that out of the gate. Not only leaders that have been formally elected into student government, which I'm going to give you an outline of those positions that are open, because many of you may or may not be familiar with those opportunities for your son or daughter. Also, I work with kids a lot through the LEAD programming. I work with them through clubs and activities, and other times of the week or month, I have a lot of touch points with students, and I'm constantly looking for those opportunities to encourage students to take risks. That's a big part of the leadership programming, and that is helping students to see themselves as leaders. I think that's an area that I know I'm reflecting back now as a parent. I had a really reserved child. I won't say the gender because some people know my kids. So I had a really reluctant son or daughter who didn't necessarily see themselves as a leader. And that wasn't until very recently. So that really struck me. And that always stays with me as how to help kids right away. First of all, tell them they could all be leaders, but do they see themselves that way, and why or why not? So what I'd like to do, just in the Q&A, we'll use that feature. And I'm going to pose a question to the group, to the parents, and that is, how many of your children, they could be adults at this point, because I saw some people register who have juniors and seniors, which is tremendous. How many of your children see themselves as a leader? So I'm going to start with that. And if you could please put in the Q&A, yes or no, if you have ever heard your son or daughter identify themselves as a leader. Just curious. Okay. I'm getting a lot of yeses, and I'm getting some nos as well. And it might be even that you're unsure how they think of themselves, which is completely fair, right? It's completely fair to say, I'm actually not sure of how they see themselves, but I would say that's a really good question to start with. And the follow-up question might be, why yes or why no? Why don't you see yourself as a leader? And what you'll be surprised with, and this surprised me, of one of my kids, is when I asked them that question, because I saw themselves as a leader, potential to be a real tremendous leader, run for office, all the things. But that person said, I don't, because I'm not the loudest in the classroom. And that's something that a lot of parents can identify with. And it's really helpful to sort of have them articulate why yes or why no, because then you'll know whatever the thoughts are that are sort of preventing them from taking the risk and seeing themselves as a leader. Because if it's the loudest in the classroom, the loudest in the classroom is not always the most effective in the classroom or any group situation. So it's helpful to, like I said, delve into the details. Now, next question. What are the most important skills, if we're talking about skill development, which we definitely do in the leadership program at Derryfield? What do you think as an adult? You're probably all leaders, I imagine. In your field, in your job, what are the most important skills for the 21st century modern leader? What would you say? I'm just curious again about your response. I'll just give you a pause there. I'm getting servant leadership as a type of leadership, and maybe the most important type, according to this person. Sure. Other things that are most important in the 21st century modern leader, what are some other qualities or slash skills? We can talk about the difference between those two. And sometimes kids get confused. What's a skill? What's a quality? If I don't have that quality, therefore I just eliminate myself, right, as being able to be a leader. We talked about that earlier. If somebody's reserved or not, if that makes them a leader. Yeah, so some people are shy. Definitely. Kids are worried about being judged. So they may not be confident. I'm seeing someone else said it's important to be an active listener. Another person said collaboration. I see inclusion, integrity, problem solving, agile, agile thinker. I love that description. Flexibility, adaptability, critical thinking, mentorship. I love that one too. Integrity, understanding others, understanding the people that you work with, active listening, curious, empathy. That's something we delve into right away in the lead classroom. Kindness, intelligence, ability to communicate came up a couple times, ability to earn trust. That's tremendous. So a lot of what you're saying to me is what we tell students right away when they get into the lead program. And we have the fortune now that of having lead built into their schedule. So everyone's going to hear you can be a leader. Here are the best practices in the leader. What will make you an effective leader? There are a lot of leaders out there that are not effective. We know that. So what makes someone an effective leader? And how to make real change, how to make a positive change in your community. That's what students really want to know. And we have incredibly empathetic and sensitive students at Derryfield, I find, and they are full of ideas of how to give back. And so we just have to start with that right away. So we have that fertile ground where students really want to actually learn. For the most part, students want to learn how to give back, how to do it in a way that makes sense. And well, how do you get going and learning the skills on how to lead a meeting and these kind of things? So we delve into that quite a bit. So thank you for that response. And then I was just saying to myself, so we know that where we want to help kids go. And the good news is that we have all these opportunities at Derryfield. So I'm going to go over, and a lot of you don't know, some of you, I see your names, you have students that are already involved in leadership, which is amazing. However, as students grow, they may want to take different risks. Right now, they're doing this, but then in the future, they might want to do that. So even if you have a son or daughter that is involved in leadership right now in a specific role, they may want to grow in a different area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the qualities that I'm learning are most important, and it's reflected in your comments. Self-aware, others aware. Knowing who your constituents are when you're making a decision, right? Aware of who's included and who's not included in the decision. Self-management, being prepared, having a positive mindset, ability to motivate others, communicative, lots of these you said. Author Michael Fullan is one of my favorites. I'm reading right now for my doctoral class. I read a couple of his books. I strongly recommend him. And I love what he says is that enthusiasm, energy, and hope are sort of the outward, they really draw people in when they're a leader. That's the outer layer that people can see, but the inner layer in a very deep level and a deep understanding is needed would be relationships, relationships, relationships. He talks a lot about building of relationships, moral purpose, which I love, as far as the why, what makes us want to give to identify that moral purpose. And we have our leadership program is actually called Leading for the Common Good. As far as the overview of the purpose of our leadership programming is to give back, to help the community to use our gifts, right? Everyone, all your kids have gifts. How do I use my gifts to serve others? So going back to that servant leadership that I saw someone write about, which is awesome. We talk about different leadership styles, which I'll get to in a minute. Servant leadership is one of them, a very common one. And you'll hear a lot of corporations and organizations now talking about the need for servant leadership. Transformational leadership is very popular leadership style theory. So, in really knowing how the nuance of change, modern leaders really need to be adaptive, adaptable, flexible, innovative, problem solving. And sometimes you decide quickly, and then other times you want to implement a change. It will take a long time for the change, depending on your organization, to really take hold. And that can be very frustrating for students, I will tell you, because they may have a great idea, they propose it, they run it through their student council, and it just takes a while for things to happen. So understanding that level of patience that is needed is really important in a leader, and to know how to work with your constituency. So, for example, I'm running something through the junior class right now in LEAD, and they have to make a proposal for a community service project, and they had to come up with various ideas, and then they're going to either decide to do one or all, but they have to learn how to make a proposal, and they have to make that proposal to me and their lead counsel, who are students, and then possibly Dr. Carter. So one group is already moving forward on their proposal right now, and that's again tremendous, and they're very enthusiastic about it. And others have really big ones. One's a service project for the Manchester area, and one's kind of more of a service project for our campus, and that has to do with their idea of hosting a Derryfield college fair. So these are real sort of world examples of putting leadership in action. They're really action-oriented servant leaders that we have at our school. So students learn all about these skills and techniques and projects through the lead class. And it starts way back even in the ninth grade retreats. We try to get in retreats, we try to do team building and sort of lay the groundwork. And then LEAD takes them, which is now finally sort of underway. We've started it before COVID, it was interrupted. Now we're back on track again with the LEAD programming. So during the LEAD, they learn about all the things that we've just been talking about. What are the skills? We run them through because they're students. We try to make it fun, give them activities, and run them through different scenarios of what did you learn in this activity? How did you gather information, and how did you make a decision? So the LEAD programming is something that they have a lot of access to. And I wanted to talk a little bit about also what are the formal leadership positions that are available. And so you could be paying attention to for yourself the different when I say formal, I mean elected government positions. And then there are elected, and then there are like the informal, right, type of positions, or I would call them opportunities available to students sort of on a more day-to-day basis. So let's run through the first formal elected office. There are 4 different possible avenues for students to go. And I want you to kind of focus more on the personality that your son or daughter may have, and what would sort of bring out their strengths in each of these type of opportunities. So number 1 is student council president. We have 2, we call them co-presidents now. It used to be vice president and president. They've adapted that to be co-presidents. They really see themselves as working side by side. And the student council member, that person who's on the council, that is probably the highest level of responsibility in terms of the number of meetings that students will attend every week. Sometimes they are on a committee that meets outside of that. So possibly 2 meetings a week. So really dedicated person who is going to stick in there and see the things through. So we have policies. This is a student who likes policy, who likes gathering information about policy, who likes adapting policy. So they like change. They're probably patient. They have to be to some level because it takes a lot of time, like I said, and it takes a process. And they also want to make sure they're gathering the full input. So they're very equitable. They're very fair about gathering input before they say what their opinion is when they're representing their class members. We have class council, who are a spirited group of students who run all school events like Winter Carnival, like Halloween activities on campus. And they're really looking to, sometimes sometimes they help with prom, but their eye is on building culture and really getting people to enjoy the student life side of our programming, creating events, creating opportunities for bonding. So they tend to be students who are very spirited. They love fun. They're very creative. And they really can motivate other kids to get involved. Discipline committee. So discipline committee is a great opportunity for students. Sometimes they're very interested in law. They're very fair. They're rule followers often, and they like to build the culture, but in a different way compared to class council. The discipline committee will be more on the side of rules, regulations, and norms. Like, what are our community norms and how do we hold those up? They listen to cases, very confidential cases, and they will not, be allowed to speak about the case at all, not even with you as parents. They're not supposed to. It's very highly confidential, and so they tend to be students who are very private, confidential. They're fair. Obviously, very interested in norms and making sure our norms are fair themselves. And sometimes they work on different policies and changing the policies in the discipline section of our handbook. And finally, the other, I wouldn't call them elected, but selected group is the Lead Student Advisory Board. And this was a board that was constructed last year, gives a lot of student voice into our LEAD program. And they tend to be very creative, interested in helping to create curriculum. So they work very well with teachers, and they also work very well with students. They're looking to carry out the mission of the LEAD program. And in the leadership in particular, I notice a lot of the students will step up and say, oh, can I lead this part of the lesson for you? Or is there anything you need me to do to help prepare for the lesson? Some of the quieter kids will offer to, do things like prepare things to have out materials and that kind of thing. They're maybe not always up in front in the classroom, but they're very interested in the process and how to create the lessons. So these are all the formal leadership groups that meet regularly. All members also tend to work together. So oftentimes, like in the time of COVID, we asked all of the groups to sort of unite and have several meetings around and they just created a recent video. I'm sure you've seen it. And there was really the cross section of all the groups. Another real benefit, I think, from being in a smaller school like Derryfield is I can really draw out someone from that group and say, hey, even though you're not in student council, why don't you lead this meeting for all the constituencies? They'll be here. Why don't you take a part of the meeting? Or why don't you lead a committee that's looking at this specific thing? About halfway through the year, we do a big sort of a check-in. It's a summit, I like to call it. And we get together and we talk about how are things going. We did that about February of last year. So we'll probably do it again soon. All the groups will get together. We'll sort of look at the goals that we set forth in the leadership training that we did in the summer. And we'll do a check-in and see where are we at now and what's needed, sort of looking ahead to the future. Last year, one of our big initiatives was to create captains of every group. And what I love about this, it's working so well, is that each group has a captain or an emerging captain. And that captain will really, what's great about that for them is it's really building their capacity as a leader. And it puts them more in the leadership seat and it takes me out. So I like to build their capacity and not as much mine, right? So I want them to learn and I want to meet with the captains and they give me feedback and I ask them to follow up on things. So those are all sort of the formal and elected positions, but there are many other ways that students can get involved in leadership at Derryfield School. As a parent, I would say a few things that you may or may not know about, or you may or may not know how to utilize for your conversations with your student. Here are a few things. Number one, the student's pathway. If you have a new student to Derryfield School, or if your student was here last year, even in 8th grade, every student will have a student pathway. What I love about this program is it really helps put the student with an adult. I've done pathways, so I'm one of them. I know there might be a couple other people here, and we know a lot about the school. We know alums that could help them. We know teachers that could help them, and they may or may not have that teacher this year. So what we'd like to do is delve in deep, get a lot of interests, interview the students, gather their interests, gather information from their advisor, possibly family, and then what we do is we create a pathway for them to say, here are some things you could take in upper school. Here are some clubs you could get involved in. Here are some leadership opportunities for you. Here are some that this is an alum that can talk to you specifically about the area of interest. Here's a teacher that teaches X class that you probably want to take before you leave here. And so this is a powerful tool for you. You can access through the advisor. Your student may or may not have it. Most of them are done for the year. So your student will receive a copy, the advisor will receive a copy, and you can receive a copy. And that's really helpful as a parent, because you'll be able to follow up on specific things that were recommended and specific people that they can talk to that are either on the campus or we can connect them. Because we know a lot about leadership is also about networking. It gives them a practice of networking. I do want to highlight a couple other things that are already embedded in the program every week. That would be clubs. Okay, clubs in the upper school differ from clubs in the middle school. So I'm going to just point that out. Every week from 2:30 to 3:30, right now on Thursday and Friday, kids have club meetings. We have a wonderful captain in Jem Pei, and she's helped to create a very streamlined, organized club schedule. She started out with training for the club leaders around how to lead clubs. And she really holds them accountable, which I love. She's very highly organized. So again, building her capacity as a leader, right? And I can think about a specific student that I did a pathway for back in 8th grade. And her interest was psychology, education, and possibly medicine. And a couple ideas I had for her was to volunteer when she was old enough, which is right now with Breakthrough. We have that, we host that on our campus, a tremendous program. And she is currently a Breakthrough teacher. She always remembered that conversation that we had back in 8th grade. She put it in the back of her head because she's still thinking about different areas of leadership. Apply for Breakthrough. I wrote a recommendation. She got into Breakthrough. She's a Breakthrough teacher. And do you know what? That also spurred her on, her confidence. I saw that in the chat as far as skills, her confidence to take more risks. And now she's starting a club. Now, this is somebody a couple of years ago when I was her advisor in 9th grade. She would have never started a club. She would barely attend a club. And now she started her own club, which kind of combines all of her interests. Very fascinating. It's a club that is a national, connects Derryfield with a national club, national organization rather, that helps kids who are sick. And I think she's thinking more along the lines of medicine, pediatric medicine, and that type of thing. So you can see just from those two examples how the pathway helped her generate some ideas and some concrete things she could do and consider. And she followed up on it. Breakthrough. I had talked to her about it maybe once or twice in between just to remind her about it. and she followed through. She did it. And I could see that now she's growing in another area, which is clubs. There was another student I know very well since middle school, very reluctant to see himself as a leader. I've asked him a couple times, you don't see yourself as a leader? No, I really don't. I did, but he just wasn't ready yet, I would say. And part of what he wanted to do was start a club for flag football. And do you know, he and another student started this flag football league for Derryfield. It was the #1 most enrolled club. He's very organized. He had a full schedule, all these teams. He had to innovate because he had so many people, and he had to work very closely with Chris Hetler for all the equipment side. And boy, did I see again, his confidence really grew through that. We have other, besides the lead, obviously lead curriculum, we also have explorations. That is another opportunity to have, I would say, to have your son or daughter meet and talk to their exploration teacher, a teacher or a staff member that they've never maybe encountered before, had the opportunity to have class with or connect with someone from the business office. And that person can really help to also just be another point of contact, another adult in the community that can really talk about what their job is if they're not a teacher. And I've really seen a lot of connections grow through the exploration program. If nothing else, it's something that's nice and relaxing as well, or just a fun interest. And that's something else I want to highlight is sometimes students don't know whether an interest is purely an interest or is it a career, is it an opportunity for growth in terms of leadership. And even, if they're not 100% sure, it's something for them to try, which I think risk taking is something I'd put up there as an important leadership skill. So finally, I just introduce a fun thing with you guys, and it's called the 4 colors personality. And what we did in all 9 through 11 so far, I haven't done it with the 12s yet because they've been focused on college preparation as getting all their applications in. And that was the priority for their lead programming this year, of course. But everybody else did what was called the True Colors Inventory. This was the aspect of getting to know yourself and your strengths and how you see yourself. And then they would have to kind of guess about their friends. And the other funny thing is that they were guessing about you. And they often wanted to say, oh my gosh, that explains why my mom or dad are like that. And I'm like this. And maybe that's why I get frustrated, learning to work with other people. So just as a fun thing before we go into some Q&A, I was going to outline and you're going to put in the chat. And I know most of the answers to, I see a lot of the people here, I know them, as how would you identify your son or daughter by the following colors? So we do this inventory. I don't tell them the colors until the end. So are they an orange? Energetic, spontaneous, charming? If you're an orange, you tend to be action-oriented and are comfortable taking risks. You are probably also competitive and seek out adventures, opportunities, push boundaries, living in the moment. So that's an orange. So think about that. Is your student more of a gold? And you can see the orange would be more of the class council type, right? Someone who gets involved in activities. Or athletics. Gold, are they a gold? Punctual, organized, precise. Golds tend to need structure and organization. If you're a gold, then you value order, rules, respect, dependability. This time is a key part. So if somebody's late, they get really upset. And that's a goal. They want to be punctual. They want others to be punctual. Following a plan or schedule is best for you. Green, if your son or daughter is a green, or if you're a green, you are analytical, intuitive, visionary. I like to call the greens the smart questioners. They sometimes can feel like they're pushing back when they're just wondering, what is the value of this activity? And they often ask it while we're doing this activity in lead class. They're innovative, they're your problem solvers, and they don't stop until they find the solution. They think outside of the box, and they sometimes feel like they have to be right. And when they're not right, they get upset. And finally, blue. Our blues are our empathetic, compassionate, cooperative. Blues tend to be very social. And if you're a blue, you value harmony and relationships, kindness, sincerity, compassion, very important. Working to collaborate, very important. They want to develop those deep connections. So we do this activity with the kids in lead, and we say which one, we have all of them do their inventory first, and then we have them put up on the board what their colors were, first and secondary. And then they even sometimes guess, what do you think the kids that you're sitting with are? And they always challenge me, can you guess my color? And I know them so well, and I work with a lot of them, right? I told you. So I actually, for like not, I have like brag, for like 99% of the time I can guess their color, and they're pretty impressed by this. um so why don't you write in the chat what you think your student might be as a primary color. It might be primary and secondary. And I love how one person wrote already, it's not really a color that you've said. It's probably like a totally different color that's not like in one of these four categories, which is completely true, right? So if you had to guess, your son or daughter's color would be, write it in the chat if you can. Sorry, not the chat, the Q&A. The Q&A. So what we do in this exercise is we actually run them through an activity, and I have the students predict, is it going to be easier to work with people that are all your same, similar strengths, or different? And we take them through the exercise. We give them a problem solving with like colors and then different colors. And what they find, and you guys probably can predict, is that actually having a diversity in your group with different strengths is actually very helpful to get the job done, because you can delegate it. And that's just an example of something that we do in leadership class. We do lots of fun things, but that's an activity that I think really resonates with students, along with developing empathy. And that's something that you all had said earlier in the chat, which is having empathy as a leader is so important. And it's frustrating for students to work with different types of kids. And, even in class, our students are constantly put in group projects, because that's the nature of Derryfield. We really like to have them practice working with groups. And so I would just encourage another thing, for a final thing, and for you all to do, is really take a close look at what the midterm comments said, because the midterm comments are another helpful tool for you. And in the comment, you will see, usually we do remark often as teachers on the ability to lead in the classroom, or taking more risks in the classroom. And that's something they can do all the time, every day. And I tell them that in the lead classroom as well, when I'm working with students. Even if you're not formally elected to leadership, you can be a leader. You can be a leader when you walk over and ask if somebody's okay. I said that in a speech this last week at Dr. Martin Luther King. That's a leader. You're looking out for somebody else, and that's something we value in our culture. So that's a leader. Someone that puts their hand up when all others are quiet and offers a thought, that's a leader. I really encourage you to think about going through those midterm comments and looking to see what the faculty say about leadership, whether or not your son or daughter is taking risks in the classroom, if they're volunteering or participating. Do they lead when they're with other students? Do they look to help where they can help? And that is something that I think cannot be sort of um, overstated, is that they can do it every day, and also take risks. Like, I mean, you have the extreme risks in, probably in their mind, getting on the stage and giving a speech, for example, if you're a junior or a senior. A freshman would never imagine that, but I will tell you, I have one student leader who told me many years ago, I will never get on stage. And do you know, she led spring carnival, winter carnival, Halloween. She's on stage with a microphone. And that takes work, and that takes effort from all of our sides, right? From the school side, the advisor side, from their side, taking little risks at a time. And it can be done. Real transformation can be done. And I'm here to help you, to answer any questions right now. I'm going to stop and I give us like 6 minutes or so. And feel free to use the Q&A and put in some questions, some thoughts. And I've covered a lot, but there's even more than that. And so, like I said, I'm going to follow up on with a very detailed overview about all the opportunities at Derryfield. We have a ton of outside opportunities as well. that we link students to, I send them emails. But I'm also going to start using the student portal. Quinn McGinley, who I think his mother is here, helped me to create a student portal for students where we have lots of live announcements. And so I am cognizant of that. And we're going to really use that tool for students. But I'd also like parents to know about the leadership opportunities out there for students to apply to. So we have plenty of those, and I want to keep you in the loop of those as well. I'm just waiting for questions, but I have one question, but I'll say this last thing. 8th to 9th grade, there was an opportunity for a summer leadership camp, and I had 3 people from Derryfield apply. I encouraged them to apply. They applied. 2 of them got scholarships. And do you know, it was very transformational for them. They were already involved in some middle school leadership programming, and then they went to this. They came back on fire. They've been volunteering for everything under the sun for me in 9th grade, and one of them is elected leader, and 2 of them are doing sort of like the quiet leading from behind, which I love. So I have a question about a 9th grader and the pathway program. Yes, it should be within the next couple of weeks, all the pathways will be done. So if you have not heard about the pathway, and your daughter will know because they will get them, and then you will find out about it as well. So it should be soon. And I'm happy to follow up with you individually about that. And somebody else just saying, thank you. They would like to be informed about the notes and just all the things that Derryfield has to offer in terms of leadership opportunities. So I will be happy to send those out. And any last minute Q&A questions, and again, I covered a lot. But we are very fortunate to have a very active student leadership group. And like I said, elected leaders, but also a lot of informal, I don't even know what it's, informal is not the right word. It's everyday leaders. And so really, I'm hoping through the LEAP program that we can make some real strides so that all students, really is an equity, that all students here, they can be leaders, that there are plenty of opportunities to lead, whether it be clubs, classroom, in the lead class, we give them opportunities as well, sports, musical, there's always something. And so if they feel like they're not sure what their niche is, I am happy to meet with them one-on-one. I've done that for several students. In addition to their advisor, I'm another resource for you. It's been great. Thank you so much. I know it's not the same as being in person and right now but it's still something that has been so wonderful. I love to talk about student leadership. It's probably my number one passion. So I really appreciate you all coming on a Monday night, and I'm going to close it up there and stay on for any more Q&A if you have it. But otherwise, thank you very much, and I will follow up with you all.